When Clash Royale first announced special game modes back in late 2016, everyone got really excited, and for the first 3 years, they were all to some degree pretty good. Game modes like Draft, Triple Draft, Double Elixir, Mega Deck, Classic Decks, and far more all came out in this time. Not to mention the catalyst for all of these special game modes was 2v2. 2v2 was probably the best out of all of these game modes, as it combined the strategy of regular 1v1 and incentivized teamwork because you would now play with another player. While I'm not the biggest fan of 2v2, I've got to at least respect the fact that it's a pretty competitively viable game mode, evident by the fact that it has been a prominent game mode in CRL. And because 2v2's popularity, it got them to add 2v2 as a permanent game mode, and I think this push made them realize that game modes can really bring a lot of hype to the game. So they started to add more and more game modes, and some of the most popular game modes nowadays got released in this era, which is why I would consider this the golden age of game modes. But in 2020, something would happen that would change the course of game modes forever. Clan Wars 2. You see, because Clan Wars 2 took a lot of time to make, that meant that all of their attention was obviously focused on this, which of course in the end wouldn't turn out that great. And because of this, the game mode sort of stagnated. This was when the meme of capture the insert card, or card spawning in the back. These memes were pretty evident of what Supercell was doing in this era, as the only game modes we really got were spawn in the back game modes and capture game modes. And anything outside of that would just be old returning game modes. And this pattern would still appear in 2021 and 2022. Mainly because in 2021 the dev team were mostly focused on content updates, and in 2022 they mainly just focused on the seasons, which meant obviously the game modes were being pushed aside. Now I'm not trying to say that all game modes we got were bad, as we would obviously get a few outliers, something like Legendary 7x Elixir, the Invisible Skeleton Challenge, Super Cards, Mega Draft, and the Totally Balanced Game Mode. While all of these game modes are more wacky than what we got prior, evident by the fact that 2 of these were April Fool game modes, it was still all unique and most importantly fun. But even with these outliers, most of these were what I just said, spawn the back game modes and capture the insert card, which is why I would consider this the first dark age of game modes. I will get to the second dark age later. But in 2023, everything would change. Now if you played in 2023 or even know anything about 2023, you probably know it as the worst year in Clash Royale, and for good reason. I mean, this year had no good updates. Pretty much all of the features were bad. They added level 15 while making the pass twice as expensive while giving out less rewards. They only added one new card that year, and the overall meta of 2023 would be like if you took heroes and tripled their strength. And the worst part is that I haven't even mentioned everything. So yeah, not a fun time to play the game. But even then, you have to take the good with the bad. And the good in this case are the game modes. While the community was focused on writing angry comments to Supercell, at the time I was just having fun playing with all these game modes. And that was one of the main reasons why I was getting into the game again. Every month, Supercell would have 4 or 5 game modes available. And every week we would get a new game mode, and when we got a new game mode, the previous game mode got deleted. Now the game modes could be Evolution Draft, build a deck around a new card / evolution, or just a returning game mode. But at least once every season we would get a new game mode. It could either be a new take on an older game mode, or just something completely new. And I now want to go over some game modes that I really liked from this era. One game mode that comes to mind is Welcome to Gooseville. This game mode would buff every spooky card. Although this game mode wasn't like the Electric Buffs game mode where every electric card just got a rage. This game mode would add new mechanics to cards. Stuff like Skeletons having a shield, Executioner being able to stun with his axe, Skeleton King spawning skeletons on deploy, and there are even more I can go over. This challenge made a lot of cards feel fresh again, and the same goes for Barrels of Fun. In this game mode, your Elixir Ball would charge really slowly, but to compensate you would get a barrel which would passively spawn Elixir. Now the fun part about these barrels, it was that if you destroyed these barrels, you would get 4 Elixir, alongside halting their Elixir production. And considering the barrels will always spawn in front of the Princess Tower, that made it easy for long range cards to snipe it. Overall, this game mode was really fun, and I remember making a deck that looked something like this so I could get the barrels. Speaking of getting stuff, the Dark Elixir Cave. This challenge would passively drop Dark Elixir, and if you dropped a troop in the Dark Elixir, your troops would pretty much have the power of 3 rages combined, and move really quickly as well as attack really quickly. with the trade-off being that they will take a lot more damage. Yet again, this challenge was just plain fun, as if you just played a bait deck, you wouldn't really be affected by the Dark Elixir. But I haven't even talked about the most iconic game mode of 2023, and this game mode is Super Draft. Super Draft was pretty much triple draft combined with super cards. This was the first time you could pit other super cards against each other, and it made for some pretty funny interactions. And in my opinion, this is the highlight of 2023's game modes. And I haven't even scratched the surface of game modes this year. Game modes like Chess, a full recreation of a chessboard in Clash Royale. Snowstorm, a game mode where troops will freeze up after a bit of time in the arena, and the only way to get them out is by using a warp spell. Boost Fields, a game mode that's played in the touchdown arena, but it has towers and it drops random spells in the middle of the arena, with some of these spells not even being in the game. Not to mention that this year had the most amount of temporary cards, with 7 in total. And there's so many other game modes that I can talk about, but if I did, I would be wasting your time. Overall, 2023 just had a bunch of fun game modes. Even game modes that used the meme formula did a slight twist on the idea. Mega Monk would spawn big monks in the back, and these monks had more health than a regular monk and would only go for towers, but of course would also allow you to use the monk ability. And for the capture game mode, we would get Capture the Queen, where you would try to capture a queen in the middle. The unique part about this game mode, it was that you could still use champions in it, which includes the Archer Queen. So this was the first ever game mode to allow you to use multiple champions. And there are other examples I can also go over. Overall, I consider this the second golden age of game modes, as the quantity and quality of these game modes is crazy. But in 2024, things were at a lesser quality. Which is not to say what we got in 2024 was bad, but it was just to say that we got less more original game modes, and instead we got more remixes, which I don't really have a problem with, as it's better to get a remix than an old returning game mode. But even then, some of the new game modes were pretty controversial, mostly because these game modes were either annoying or just stupid. Plus, some of us wouldn't have any new or even remixed game modes, and the overall effort of game modes dramatically decreased, evident by the fact that we would only get 3 temporary cards this year. But as I said, 2024 wasn't a bad year. It was just not as good as 2023. But even then, most of the game modes that year were still fun, and we got more overall remixes. Now, I think the main reason why we got a massive decrease of new game modes in 2024 were because of events. 2024 would be the start of monthly events for Clash Royale, and these definitely affected the amount of new game modes we got. But overall, 2024 was still a good year for game modes, just not as good as 2023. But if 2024 was worse than 2023, then 2025 is the worst. This year wouldn't even give us one new game mode, and while we would get a few remixed game modes, that was about it for 2025. This year mostly just consisted of old returning game modes, and most of the game modes were just taken from 2023 and 2024. And 2025 would also just have less game modes in general. Remember how I said that every season we would get 4 to 5 game modes? Well, in 2025, we're now only guaranteed 2 to 3 game modes, meaning the chance of getting new game modes and remixed game modes have dropped off a cliff. And honestly, I think this is the second dark age of game modes, because all we're getting are old or remixed game modes, kinda like how we only got spawn in the back game modes and capture game modes back in 2020. And considering this is the first year to not have any new temporary cards since 2022, that should just prove it right there. Although yet again, there is an explanation for this. Yet again, Superstore are doubling down on events. Not necessarily the fact that we're getting more rewards from them, but the fact that Superstore is adding more graphic design to each event, making each event have more of their own theme. But still, I don't think the trade-off was worth it. So that leaves us with 2026. And honestly, I don't think it would be better in 2026. But considering 2025 reworked and removed so much, I don't think it's too crazy to hold out hope for more game modes. Because right now, it doesn't really feel like the game is that fun anymore. But also because it feels like we're doing the same thing again and again. It's either grinding ladder or grinding rank, which can get boring really quickly, and game modes spice things up and make the game feel more fresh. But because game modes nowadays feel like an afterthought, it makes the game feel less and less exciting, which in turn makes the game less and less fun. But with that, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Talker, CR, and BS.